Hey everyone, it's Jeff Keighley, and welcome to the Monarch Theater here at DC's Fandome's Watchverse. This is exciting because we are going to bring a very special panel to you right now. Thanks for joining us, and we are going to celebrate the best-selling Injustice video game, Injustice: Gods Among Us, and Injustice 2, as well as other work that NetherRealm Studios has done with the DC franchise. Both the Injustice games are bestsellers and have even spawned the creation of a hugely popular digital-first comic of the same name, as well as a couple of hugely popular mobile games as well. So let's get right into it. An all-star panel today for everyone here at the DC Fandome. Of course, we got to welcome a man who's very busy all around the Fandome. I'm sure is DC's Chief Creative Officer and Publisher, Jim Lee. Jim, great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
We've also got the Creative Director at NetherRealm Studios. Of course, you can't do an Injustice panel without him, Ed Boon. Dr. Boon, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here with everybody. It's a lot of fun.
All right, great to have you with us, Ed. And we also have the story and voiceover director at NetherRealm Studios, Dominic Cianciolo. Dom, how are you, man?
I'm doing great. An absolute pleasure to be here today.
All right, you got the Injustice poster up. I like it. Properly set. And finally, we have another special guest, the #1 New York Times bestselling writer of Injustice: Gods Among Us, Injustice 2, Injustice Year Zero, Deceased, and the creator of the Deep TV series, Tom Taylor. Hey, Tom.
Hello.
All right, we've got everyone connected. Well, let's get right into it. We are so excited about Injustice, but in case you need a reminder, here's a taste of what the games and comic books were about.
Savior. Monster. Guardian. Vigilante. The preservation of life. So often, the justification for taking it. Humans, elevating those that keep guard until they watch too close. And the so-called hero, condoning the very act he would condemn. Transgressions of the past shape actions to come. As offspring turns into adversary, yesterday's loss leads to madness. And God becomes tyrant, becomes outcast, becomes dust, as factions dissolve and form, and lust for power enslaves all. Such folly and futility in the grand design. Curious how lines once clearly defined become blurred. Perhaps it is time for them to be redrawn.
All right, so let's get right into all things Injustice. NetherRealm's approach to story has been very unique, especially for fighting games. They've been deep and immersive and presented in such a cinematic way. As anyone that plays these games know, they are fighting games, but they are really just amazing kind of, I said, cinematic tales about these characters and the world. Ed, let's talk a bit about the world of Injustice. Of course, we know you and the NetherRealm team for amazing work on Mortal Kombat, but what was the catalyst for you guys to work on Injustice? Of course, you're part of Warner Brothers and the DC family, but what was the sort of the impetus for this game and the crazy storyline that you came up with?
Well, we had been working on Mortal Kombat games, forever, in a sense. And then we got the opportunity to do a game called Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe. And with that game, one of the things that really stood out for us was there was an opportunity to do a pure DC fighting game, something that celebrated, things on a superhero scale and level of things. And that was really kind of like the catalyst that got us into thinking, let's do a DC fighting game. And then Justice was really born from that. With any story in fighting games, we always want to see matchups. We want to see Superman versus Batman. We want to see Flash versus Wonder Woman. We want to see all these things. And so we needed a story that would actually have it make sense that Superman and Batman would be at odds, would be in conflict. And so that's where the whole idea of an alternate universe, alternate versions of these characters, that let us set up a scenario where it made sense that Superman and Batman were adversaries. And that really kind of defined the slice of the multiverse that is the Injustice world, where Superman is a dictator and Batman is trying to take him down. And so that were the seeds of how Injustice started.
Well, it's such a fresh take on the universe. Dom, tell us a bit about the script and bringing this to life, because it as Ed said, it's its own slice of the multiverse. Was it fun or a little daunting to figure out how to switch things up?
I mean, working on Injustice was a tremendous amount of fun. As Ed mentioned, it was a change of pace from the other things that we had been doing, and to be able to dive into a completely different lore and try to make things work and work with these iconic characters was a real treat. And as we were looking at, how to do this alternate universe, and one of the things that Ed had talked about early on was this idea that our take on the DC universe would be kind of the NetherRealm branded version. So it'd be a little grimmer, a little darker, sort of more akin to Mortal Kombat, without obviously not taking it that far. And so initially, the pitches that we put together were based on some of the wilder takes of the areas of multiverse that we've seen previously. And as we presented those to Ed, and he was looking at it and thinking about it, his instinct was we go for something that was more grounded rather than something that was really out there, to keep it identifiable for fans. And that's where the Injustice universe really started to take shape, because it brought a couple of questions to the fore. And that is, what events could cause Superman to let go of these self-imposed restraints that he has and sort of pursue justice by any means necessary? And then how would that process corrupt him? And then once we got to there, it's like, okay, how are the other people in the DC universe going to react to this unchained Superman? And so from there, the battle lines got drawn very quickly as you looked at the characters and their relationships, and sort of the fissures of how they would deal with this were exposed. And from there, it was just a matter of weaving all this stuff together into one big tapestry and creating the events that became the main plot of Injustice.
And then you, Dom, Ed, have to go out and pitch this, I'm sure, to DC on what you want to do with the storyline of the characters. Jim, you were publisher at the time when this kind of came through of what they wanted to do with Injustice. What was your kind of initial reaction when you saw the story direction?
Yeah, when we first heard this idea, we were actually really thrilled, because it very much aligned or mirrored our own ambition with something we called the New 52 in publishing. That was like 2011, and it was a soft reset of the universe where we introduced sort of updated origins, new costumes, new looks for the characters, dialed back their experience, really just contemporizing and modernizing the mythology. And we also love the fact that this game leaned into the multiverse, which we feel is really one of our competitive advantages. This notion that there are different versions that are characters in alternate realities really allowed them to have the creative freedom to tell this amazing story. And we love the fact that there is a backstory to this. It's not just heroes fighting heroes just because it's a cool game. We love the fact that there was a story that brought this to life, and that it leaned upon the canon that was part and parcel of the DC universe.
Yeah, no, it's so amazing what the team has accomplished and how Injustice has grown beyond games now even. Tom, I wanted to ask about how you got involved and got to expand on the story even more.
Yeah, sure. Well, DC came to me, I think Jim Chadwick came to me and basically said, Tom, I just done DCUO Legends Online, which was another sort of game type thing, and they were really happy with that. They came to me and said, are you interested in basically telling a terrible story about Superman? And as a huge Superman fan, I was traumatized by this idea. But, of course, I had to agree, because it was getting to play with some of the greatest toys in the world. And I spoke to Jim Chadwick about this. He and I came up with this idea. I was given the game script by the people at NetherRealm. I went, oh my God, how do we get here? And that was the story that I realized we had to tell. We had to tell the story of the world's greatest friendship, the world's finest friendship breaking up, essentially.
That's quite the story that you put together. And, you know, the story continued in Injustice 2, both classic games from NetherRealm. Ed, I wanted to ask you about the characters in this game, because as you know, with any of your fighting games, people want to know which characters are you going to get to play as, who's going to be featured in the game. Beyond Batman and Superman, how did you determine kind of the roster of characters for both the first game and the second game? I know it's, you know, a constant debate and discussion, but can you maybe take us inside your thought process a bit?
Yeah, there was a lot of things that had to be satisfied with that. You know, obviously we start with popularity of the characters. We're not going to have a DC game without Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern. We also wanted a balance of heroes and villains. So we wanted to represent the villains in there. We wanted enough female characters. And then the story needs, I had these really unreasonable restrictions that I put on the story team, where we got to have Batman fight Superman. We got to have Batman fight Batman. We got to have Superman fight Superman. Wonder Woman has to fight Flash. So this long list of, we got to set up these fights. And then they had to write a story that satisfied all of those situations, that set up those conflicts. And to this day, I'm still amazed that they wrote a cohesive story within those restrictions. And, you know, on top of that, kind of like what Dominic was saying, we were able to put like because it was an alternate universe and one that we kind of carved out, we were able to a lot more flexibility and have heroes and villains do things that they would normally never do, that kind of broke their code in a sense, but at the same time told a really compelling story. So it was a lot of simultaneous things that had to be satisfied that amazingly were done.
Different versions of characters, and that also extended to the customization. Jim, I wanted to ask you about the designs of the characters and what NetherRealm did, because those alternate takes also meant, you know, alternate versions of the character, and then you add in the ability in Injustice 2 to do a lot of customization on top of it. I'm curious from sort of the DC perspective, what was your perspective on how NetherRealm was sort of playing with the characters?
We were jealous, man. You know, to have the opportunity to kind of design it from scratch was the impetus behind New 52, and the fact that they were doing it in the video game space was a lot of fun to watch. And it's just limited to the costumes, but the way the characters express their powers, the visuals that you're able to create in a game are hard to replicate in a two-dimensional flat drawing, right? So they were able to do sort of realize the powers of the characters and express them in ways that would be very, very challenging to do in print. So we were kind of just in awe as they were taking these characters and running with it and doing such fun things. I mean, you know, some of those scenes where the Flash runs around the world and well, he punches you and then he runs around the world and punches you again. Like, I mean, that's just awesome. It's just so imaginative and creative and fun. And so I think it was beyond just the designs, everything about it really just had a lot of ingenuity and creativity, and we really loved what they were doing with it.
Yeah, no, you said such amazing cutscenes, cinematics in the game. Although, Tom, this world was really introduced to people through a comic, which was amazing, is where it sort of all started ahead of Injustice, the original game. And I was curious, you know, the comic also was able to introduce more characters than those that players saw in the game. So you're really kind of, you know, building the lore of this Injustice world. Can you talk a bit about how you approached kind of developing the wider world of Injustice beyond the game?
Sure. Well, look, I'll start with the fact that there were a lot more characters. And basically, this was my first big shot at DC. And I saw a chance to play with all the best toys straight away. And so that's why there were so many characters, because I just wanted to write them all. Unfortunately, I had the game script, so I could see where the world went. I could see who had to be taken off the board. But what I ended up doing was just unleashing a little bit too much and taking too many people off the board. So I remember when and Dominic were meeting to talk about Injustice 2. They're like, oh, we can have this character. No, Tom's killed him. Oh, what about no? Tom's killed her, which was, fun for me and a terrible nightmare for them. But as far as expanding on this universe, I mean, it was a joy. We had this book that was coming out every single week, and we could do anything. We had their great script. I knew that this was a universe where Aquaman could feed a person to a shark. So for me, there were no boundaries, and it was just so much fun to play with. And obviously, I didn't want to do these terrible things to Superman and to Batman, these characters that I loved, but I knew I had to, so I just went with it. And then it was just a matter of building something that made sense for the character. So for me, Superman isn't somebody that has one bad thing happen to him and then suddenly he's spinning around in a chair and patting a white cat. He doesn't turn evil in an instant. So we need to show the slow degradation of this wonderful hero. And that's what Injustice was about for me as a writer.
Dom, for you as a writer, how did Tom talked about sort of the collaboration a little bit there. How did what Tom was doing for the comics influence the game? He mentioned the game scripts. Were you guys collaborating on this from the get-go?
Sure. Well, the efforts between the comics and the game were running independently because, as Tom mentioned, we had the game script done, and then he began work on the comic. But then it became, over time, sort of a feedback loop as we moved into Injustice 2, because Tom had done this amazing job in the first set of comics of sort of following the breadcrumbs, the little things we hinted at in the script, and then expanding on them, and then taking them to level 500. Introducing a whole bunch of new elements that we hadn't even thought of with the amazing canvas that he had. And so once we came to Injustice 2, we had to deal with, yes, all the people that Tom killed off, but then there were so many other items that he had done that we wanted to pay honor to. And so even like, for example, the first chapter of the Injustice 2 story mode is a flashback, and it actually retells one of the key sets of events where we see Batman and Superman come apart that is depicted in the comics. We had to tweak it a little bit to make it work within the context of the game story, but it all worked together to sort of really make everything feel like one big continuity. And there are a lot of other things as well. I mean, the way that Tom had ended Black Canary's story with another alternate dimension, Green Arrow, from a third dimension, we were able to work that back into Injustice 2 to justify Green Arrow's continued appearance in the story, even though he had been killed off. So it was really great to have that additional springboard as we moved into Injustice 2.
One thing that we haven't mentioned yet are the mobile games. And Ed, I remember telling you years ago how impressed I was with the quality of what the team did at NetherRealm with the mobile games. I mean, how they look, and incredible graphics and gameplay. Can you maybe talk a bit about the mobile games and how those came into the picture for NetherRealm?
Yeah, we were just kind of like in our early stages of developing mobile games. We had done a couple of releases. We did like a Batman game, semi-related to the Arkham games, and we really saw an opportunity to do something strong with mobile. What I love about the mobile game with the comic is they're both kind of like, they were spawned from the game, but they just became their own forces by themselves, and, like comparable forces. The mobile game, both mobile games made over $200 million. I mean, that's like movie level, income. And it's like, so that along with the comic, which, I don't know how many people remember that comic book owned the comic book digital charts. Like, I would see like 8 of the top 10 were Injustice. And to me, that's one of the things we're most proud of, is these offshoots became their own forms of entertainment in themselves. And so that mobile game, along with it, became like this huge thing that we suddenly had on our hands that we had to sustain. And so, with the quality of the games, we were able to get comparable graphics to the consoles on an iPhone or an iPad or something. And they became their own, forces of nature in themselves.
And if I could add on to it, having that kind of collaboration between a game and comics has always been sort of a unicorn or white whale for us. Having that kind of close collaboration and building off of a concept in both mediums at the same time is something that we've always strived for. And honestly, it paid off. As Ed was mentioning, Injustice, the digital comic, it lit up the charts. It actually outsold our best-selling comic, which was Batman. And even when we put it into physical, formats, it sold gangbusters. So it did really, really well. And we love the fact that it brought in all these fans from a very friendly adjacent space into the publishing world. So we're very thankful to NetherRealm for introducing new fans to the DC mythology. And I also want to give a big thank you to Tom. Tom is an amazing writer, but he has the unique skill set of looking at the entire DC universe and being able to find roles for each and every character in a big sort of epic soap operatic story is something that is hard to do, and he's one of the masters at it. And so he really created a storyline that also set the platform for the next game and future adaptations of this content. So thank you very much, Tom, for all you've done.
Thank you.
And one of the great collaborations we had with Injustice was Jim Lee graced us with a custom design of Scorpion for Injustice as Scorpion guest starred on the Injustice 1 game. And so, there was just so much cross-pollination and collaboration with everybody. It was a great time to be involved with comics, video games, mobile games. They just really played off each other well. And, it was a great time.
Yeah, I can say too, just on that cross-pollination, I had to actually delete the mobile game from my phone because there was a concern that I wasn't going to hit my deadlines because I was grinding. So thanks for that, everyone, NetherRealm.
All right, well, we're going to wrap up the first portion of the panel now. Thank you so much to Jim and Tom. And before they go, I want to remind everyone that the Injustice story isn't done. The 14-chapter digital-first comic series Injustice Year Zero just launched on August the 2nd. It's a prequel to the first Injustice series, and the first 4 chapters are available right now for purchase at Comixology and participating digital retailers. So there you go. The Injustice story continues. Jim, Tom, thanks for joining us so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And thank you, Tom, Ed, and Dominic. It's been a real pleasure.
All right, well, we are not done with Dom and Ed because there was another amazing DC collaboration that just happened this year. That is, of course, the Joker coming into Mortal Kombat 11, something that we were all so excited to see. And guys, let's talk a bit about the crossover between DC and MK11. Ed, lots of great guest characters, of course, in MK. Why did the team decide to include Joker in MK11? And the other thing is, we should talk about the character design too, because there's so many different Jokers. Maybe tell us a bit about that.
Well, over the years, we always assumed that there was this line that we could not have DC characters in Mortal Kombat. It was, and I would always use the expression, I have no desire to cut Batman's head off. So as we thought about it a little bit more, Joker had this movie coming up, which was, an R-rated movie, and it was taking a really kind of hard-edged look at that character, a darker look. And so we thought that there was an opportunity to even consider putting him in Mortal Kombat. And when we asked, to our surprise and our to delight, DC was, yeah, let's talk about this. And so, we came up with a very dark version of the Joker. Mortal Kombat 11 has a lot of customization in it. And so as far as we gave him a look, very dark look, but the main thing was having players come up with their look of Joker, different hats, different canes, different outfits that they could wear. And that's what I've seen people doing mainly, is just building what they think Joker should look like in Mortal Kombat.
And that extended to the intros. Dom, tell us a bit about getting Joker to get to play in this world. Again, you're having too much fun, but could you tell us a bit about how you came up with some of those insane intros?
Sure. The Joker intros it's a big collaboration among a lot of people, because there are 2 aspects of expressing character within the intros. First is the physical animation. What is the character doing? How are they entering the fight? And then the other side of it, of course, is what I specialize in, which is the dialogue side of things. Now, Josh Slingerland, who is our creative lead on the physical side of the animations, he was going for something that he would call like playfully murderous, and really creating this very dark take on the Joker. And he was really inspired by the Droogs in Stanley Kubrick's Clockwork Orange. So you see a lot of that kind of with him in the character. And he's also looking at other sort of comics and other properties where the Joker's appeared in and sort of being inspired by iconic moments and beats to sort of include in those intros. From a dialogue side, we're trying to continue that as well, and really trying to make Joker stand out among the other MK villains, so that he's uniquely dark, uniquely depraved, and different, and just he revels in violence in a way that even some of our worst villains of Mortal Kombat don't. Other part of the fun for us, of course, is that this is not our first turn with Joker in a Mortal Kombat Joker mashup, and so we wanted to pay honor of what had come before in Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe, so that the characters that were in MK11 that also appeared in that game, they had a history with Joker. They remember him. They have bad memories of that. So we could sort of play with that. And, our fans always love when we Easter egg things and do callbacks. And it was really well received, that nod to MK's history with Joker's appearance in this one.
Now we've got a couple of fan questions for you guys. So many fans around the world wrote in with questions about all things from NetherRealm. So we got a couple that we're going to go to. And this first one is, I'm sure, a question that got it sent in by quite a few people, but the one that we happened to select was from Juan in Argentina, and he wants to know, Injustice 3 coming soon, ? Ed?
Oh, I'd love to answer that question. We have nothing to say at the moment about Injustice 3. I wish we could talk, but at the moment we have nothing to announce. But we appreciate the desire to see one.
Just stay tuned to Ed's Twitter. One day he'll tease something.
Right.
But all right, well, we tried, right? All right, on to the next question. This is one I think both you guys can answer. Yvonne from the UK wants to know, what member of the Justice League would win the Mortal Kombat tournament?
I was thinking about this today, and I had a thought occurred to me. I'm actually going to go with the Atom, because I'm not sure anybody in the Mortal Kombat universe would have ever fought anything like it, and his particular powers of being able to go microscopically small and then absolutely gigantic. If he showed up at the Mortal Kombat tournament unannounced with no preparation, he might just wipe the floor with everybody.
Right to the top.
Yeah.
Ed, what do you think?
If we eliminated those pills that the characters took in Injustice to be able to withstand, a fight with Superman, they don't exist in Mortal Kombat. So I'd have to go with Superman. I mean, that's obviously, can't imagine somebody being fast enough to even make contact with him.
Ed, Dom, this has been so much fun. And again, you guys have done so many great games over the years at NetherRealm, but also what you've done with Injustice has just been so fresh and exciting in the DC universe. And I love that it's extended into comic books and the mobile game, hopefully other mediums as well in the future. And I hope this is not the last we've heard of Injustice on the game side. But congratulations, guys, on an amazing franchise. Two franchises, really, MK and also Injustice. And we look forward to whatever NetherRealm has for us in the future. So Ed Boon, Dom, thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you for
and this has been such an awesome insight into the world of DC and NetherRealm's acclaimed fighting games. Thanks again to Ed and Dom, and of course, Jim and Tom as well for joining us. And we hope that everyone watching is a fan of Injustice and you get to play the games and also check out the comics. As I mentioned, the new comics just hit earlier this month. And if you haven't already gotten the games yet, you can find Injustice 2 on sale now across some of your favorite retailers, and you can download the mobile version of the game from the app and Google Play stores. Thanks for joining us here. This Fandome thing is such a cool, different experience in these crazy times we're in. Hope you enjoy the rest of the events, and we look forward to seeing everyone again soon.